and maybe one person that could help us put an end to that run that Tampa Bay's been having in our division is a new assistant coach that we got, Nate Ollie, who's coaching the defensive line. Raheem Morris, in an article written by Tyler Carmona of Sports Illustrated, said that Nate Ollie is a walking ball of energy. I actually reached out to Tyler to see if there were any nuggets that he wanted to, emphasize more in the article that he potentially couldn't touch on. And he told me that he wanted you all, the listeners, to, hear this as well. He said that Rook mentioned that Ollie's coaching style and intensity matches up well with the new style of defense he wants to play. A lot of attacking and intensity rather than waiting for the offensive line to get to their assignment. Jeff, could Nate Ollie coming on board on this staff be the X factor in an improved pass rush in 2025?
I hope so. I mean, all jokes aside, right? When you look at the Falcons defense over the last, 5-6 years, the defensive line has been a really uninspired group, right? Like they have not been very good. They have not been, they play really lackluster. And I know things kind of went south. I'm going to give you a name here in just a second, okay? When he first got to Atlanta, he was that raw guy, and they played really well for him. And unfortunately, things kind of crashed and burned. But when Quinn brought in Brian Cox to coach the defensive line, right? Like he was that fiery, passionate guy, and that room had not had that in a minute. And things obviously went sour fairly quickly. It turned out that Cox at some point had been relieved of his duties kind of in season, and Dan Quinn had taken out. And I don't remember if that was the Super Bowl year or 2017 when things really kind of it crashed and burned. But, kind of leading up to that, right? The couple of years, as Brian Cox kind of got in there. Now, if you've watched the NFL for a long time, like I have because I'm 45, Brian Cox played that way, right? Like he was an asshole. Super high energy guy, but was an absolute asshole on the field. Teammates fucking hated him. But you couldn't say anything because that dude brought it every single Sunday. And he coached that same way. And he obviously rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But he still brought that intensity. And I don't think the Falcons have had that in that room since he was let go. And so you're talking almost a decade now of not having that guy that brings that type of emotion and that type of tenacity to that room that it takes. And so when you've got it, and I know we all love to talk about how these are professionals and you should not. Coaches still fucking matter in the NFL. The biggest thing that coaches in the NFL do is the psyche, right? That's the difference between the successful ones and the not, because they all make more money than you do, right? The players make more money. How do you get their respect? And it's a psychological game. And so when you have a guy like Raheem Morris that people want to play for and is labeled a player's coach, that can be both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a double-edged sword. What does your coaching staff around him look like? And I think here in year 2, I think we're getting a better coaching staff than he had in year 1. And so for me, when you have a guy that players want to play for, if you can get a player to want to run through a brick wall for you, like Ollie seems to be doing, that can only be a good thing. Will it last long? Don't know. But could it be a catalyst, again, for a defensive room that has been really lackluster for 10 years? I think it's a great thing. And so I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see what he brings. And more importantly, I'm excited to see what kind of development he's going to be able to do with Jalen Walker, with JPJ, having a veteran like Leonard Floyd. Like there's some, a guy that we've labeled a project, and this was another argument this week. I called Rook a fucking project and have since he was drafted. Nothing that has been shown has changed my mind on that. And by the way, if you're going to fucking argue with me on something, don't prove my point. Like, don't tell me I'm right by telling me I'm wrong and then reiterating what I just fucking told you.
Jeff, I'm glad you brought up Brian Cox though, because I was actually gonna make a point. I had a point written down that since Cox, you look at all the D line coaches we had, they're either out of the league. I mean, the last one we had, Jay Rogers, he's with the Saints, so we'll give him a pass on that. He obviously didn't do shit with us, so fuck him exactly. But the rest of them, like they're either out of the league. I think one of them is in Georgia Tech. So there's this saying in football: iron sharpens iron. But literally, our defensive line has been shit softens shit. That's what's been happening, and hopefully, Ollie can change that. Check out his track record, Jeff. In 2024, he was the defensive line coach in Houston. The defensive line there was fourth in sacks. He helped Danielle Hunter get to another Pro Bowl. He helped Will Anderson, I believe, get double-digit sacks. In 2023, he was with the Colts. That defensive line was fifth in sacks. And in 2022, he was also with the Colts. That D-line ranked top 10. So, this guy is not only a ball of energy, but he has a proven track record working with the D-line. I'm excited what he's going to do with the younger guys. I have high hopes for this defensive line. I do not think we're going to be at the bottom half of the league. You ask me right now, top or bottom 15, Jeff? Give me top 15. I think we're going to be in the top half of the league next year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a win. If you can go from being 28th or 30th in the league in sacks and actually productive defensive line, and you can somehow make that jump into the top 15 in a year, that's a win all day. And I think anybody would take that and run with it.
Absolutely. And this is what we need, right? We need coaches to be more passionate, more fiery. And I hope that, I like the fact that Raw didn't play buddy-buddy with Jimmy Lake and said, let's give him another year. Let's see what it is. He recognized the problem and said, no, you know what? We're going to go in a different direction. Granted, he went to Ulbrich, who they coached together in Atlanta. But, that's how it works in the NFL, too. You go with coaches you're familiar with. But I'm happy that he recognized the mistake, moved on from it, and now hopefully this new coaching staff can get our defense on the right track.
And I also love the fact that he's not trying to play big name bingo, right? We talked about Brian Cox. Dan Quinn, after he let him go, brought in Bryant Young, a guy who at the time had not coached in 5 years and had never coached in the NFL. Yes, he's an NFL Hall of Famer. Yes, that's a guy that I watched growing up with the 49ers. But that was a guy that had not had any NFL coaching experience and hadn't coached at all in 5 years when he brought him in to be the defensive line coach, right? But I love the fact that Raheem's bringing in guys that have success, right? That have a name on their own within the NFL. Fans may not know who they are, but the guys within the league know who they are. And you're not just talking about another big name. So I love the fact that he's not playing big name bingo with these guys, that he's bringing in guys, yes, that he trusts, but two, that have a track record of success.
Jeff, I want to ask you, for Brian Cox, do you remember what went wrong there? Because I think it caught a lot of people off guard when he was just let go in the middle of the season when we were actually a pretty solid team there. Any backstory to that, or was it just simply he was probably being a really big asshole to players and coaches in the building?
God, you put me on the spot with this one.
Sorry, I always want the behind the scenes story.
No, at the time I was obviously with 92.9, right? And so I'm trying to remember. I know he had come out and said what he thought the theory was, and I can't remember. I can't remember what it had to do with. There was tension within the coaching staff, and I think there was a lot of pressure on Dan Quinn. I think that started to kind of bleed over to the staff itself. And Brian Cox is being Brian Cox, right? He's a dick. And there's no other way to say that. It rubbed. And Dan Quinn is not that kind of guy. He didn't run that kind of ship. You look at all the coaches he had under him. The biggest asshole he had was Kyle Shanahan. But other than that, he didn't have a coaching staff that was like that. And so when you have a bully, which Brian Cox has been known to have, it just rubbed people the wrong way. But there was nothing that. Again, none of us even knew until I think after the Super Bowl that he had been even let go. right? Like none of us even knew that. It wasn't something the Falcons put out there. It wasn't something Dan Quinn had talked about. Like they really kept that under lock and key. And it was something that I think somebody noticed in the Super Bowl that Brian Cox wasn't anywhere to be found. Wasn't on the field, wasn't in the box, wasn't anywhere. And, kind of leading up to that, it was really kind of one, your defensive line coach is never going to be never going to be sent to talk to the press. So that was never an issue. And the Falcons back then really, they didn't allow media out to attend a whole lot of the practice, right? Like they had their open sessions, but it was really more of a, team activity type of thing. So, not having a defensive line coach there, probably not really that big of a deal. So it was really kept hush hush, but it's never, Dan Quinn has never talked about it. The Falcons never kind of talked about it. If I'm not mistaken, Brian Cox kind of, put out something that why he thought it had happened, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it was.